All right. Hello, Fortinos, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is May 20th, 2022. Ah, man. The anticipation, the wait, it's exhausting. It's the excitement, right? It's the buildup of knowing how close we are to prayerfully be standing before our Lord and Savior. To the outside world, we sound like a bunch of nutcases, but I promise you, to the best of the revelation that is being given here in this ministry, this is the season and time. It is at the door, brothers and sisters. I have said this many times, and I will say it again for those whose ears haven't quite heard it. I have not heard of thus saith the Lord. I have not had dreams and visions. I've been given the revelation of the open book. All right. And those who have come to see it and those who have taken the time and who understand it have seen it as well and can go into it themselves and pull things out because we're Bereans, right? We listen to the Spirit when you're reading scripture and something just says, there's something else going on here. We dig and we dig and we dig and we dig. And it's been over 4.5 years of digging and digging and the revelation of the open book. It's absolutely incredible. And this is where we are late in the evening, or in the evening, I should say, right here on May 20th, 2022. We are looking for everything to begin to change between now and June 14th of 2022. Between June 14th, well, depending what side of the world you live on, 13th, 14th to the 21st, 22nd, I truly, truly believe with all of my heart that this is, we can just say, go time. All right. We, for anybody that's new, a lot of this is gonna be going way over your head, but we understand the truth of the 70th year scripturally. We understand the counting of the kings for the house of Israel compared to the house of Judah scripturally. We know the house of Israel was spring at the Nisan. We know the house of Judah counts from the fall in Tishri. We understood biblically how, as I said, that this is the 70th year, and in the reality of it, it was precisely the same, that it was 4 years when they came into the land, and then the new cycle of Shemitahs began from 52 to 53 as year one. We know that they're counting from the fall feast because it's not the house of Israel in the land, it's the house of Judah. And so the house of Judah counts from Tishri. And it just so happens that the new cycle of 7, leaving only 2 cycles of 7 remaining, begins this fall. Over and over, we learned the 3 feasts of the Lord. There are 3 feasts of the Lord: Passover, right? Unleavened bread, Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles. We learned the order of all 3 of these. That's the middle one. Sivan, the ox, is first, is the beginning. The next will be Passover for the great multitude rapture in the 7th year of seals. But it will begin at the fall feast. That's when the gathering will start. But they won't be fully brought in until the time of Passover in the 7th year of seals. We know that when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, at the end of 13 years, at the end of the 6th year of trumpets, at that 7th year about to begin of trumpets, the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives at Tabernacles. Over and over and over, piece after piece, from Genesis in the beginning till the end of the book, the Aleph and the Tav. It has opened and opened and opened and opened. That's why we're excited here. That's why it's on edge. That's why we're trying to tell everybody we can. And then take all of this that we've come to understand and look around the world. Look around the world. PCR machines being used, testing people going in and out of countries, digital currency, Digital IDs coming to every single country around the world. All the countries are talking about it now. They are all beginning to implement it. All of it. What's connected to it? It's going to be your credit score. It's going to be your bank accounts. It's going to be your medical records. These were all things in the very first video Ministry Revealed ever did about almost 5 years ago. In mid-June, it'll be 5 years before any of us had heard of PCR machines. So all of these things and so much more, hundreds more, have shown us this is the time. This is the first time this ministry, looking year after year, trying to understand the 70th year, would look at one time of year and another time of year and another time of year. Not this year, we didn't. Since late December, beginning of January this year, we haven't looked at another time because we have understood, and our focus has always been at Feast of Weeks because now we have understood it. We understand the threes. Everything is in threes, and there are 3 feasts of the Lord, and the one that begins it all for the bride of Christ, the escape of the bride of Christ, the pre-trib, quote unquote, rapture, what we call escape, which is called like a rapture in Scripture, like a harpazo, like a caught up, begins with the Feast of Weeks. It is the first fruit of the wheat harvest. This is what's coming, guys. This is what's coming. Not Shavuot, the true Feast of Weeks count. This is where we're at. And for those that are new to the ministry and saying, oh my goodness, this is already becoming a lot to take in, you can come here to this playlist. And I'm going to recommend this before we do anything else today, because some of you are already going to understand a little bit about where we're going. We've talked about a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. We've talked about it from a different angle. It's heavy. When you understand it, it's hard to believe at first. But every single piece that I have ever brought forward in the revelation of the understanding for the end of days, for the is to come, has proven it true. And I'm going to be building it up in this entire video where you're going to be saying, yeah, of course, that's the end. Yeah, that's the end, right? Like, I think the video today is going to be called In the End of the World Again. All right? Many of you guys know what that means. Again. Well, I'm gonna let you guys know, and you're gonna see this end of the world, an end of the world, an end of the world. And you're gonna say, yes, of course, with everything we know, this isn't talking about when Jesus came the first time. It wasn't the end of the world 2,000 years ago. Okay? But we've been taught to believe that that's what it meant, because when we read Scripture, we're reading it in the is. But Old Testament and New Testament both reveal within themselves prophecy of the is to come. It's everywhere. We have shown it hundreds of times that it's not just the Old Testament with prophecy built into it to reveal the is to come, but the Gospels reveal the is to come. The Thessalonians and Corinthians and Romans, and you guys know this. These are things built within them, even though we've been taught and we read them in the is to apply them as the church does in our day-to-day lives. Within them is hidden mysteries of the is to come. And I'm going to show you another one today that Mike, I believe Mike introduced or mentioned in his last TikTok video over on Interrupts 165, that he had mentioned that I was going to talk about it in this upcoming video, because he shared it with me. It was, I don't know, I think it was a brother on one of the videos. I think it was the live show we did or something Mike did. And a brother had commented about this piece of Scripture and this specific word end. And I know that we've gone to that piece of Scripture, but I don't know that I had ever gone into the definition for the word end. And this Mike leading me into it and saying, go check it out. I checked it out and I said, oh, Mike, I said, this is awesome. I said, are you going to do a video on this? He's like, no, I'll just do a TikTok. I'll let them know and you do the video. Because as soon as you guys know, I've said it before, as soon as you see something, as soon as I see something, it's just like click, 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 click. And what's fascinating about it is even though it's a Greek word, it tells you the comparative words that would be applied to it in the Hebrew. And when you see them, and as we go through this, the entire way through, you're just going to say, okay, yeah, that's the end of the world. Yeah, that's the end of the world. Yeah, that's like the end of trumpets time. That's the end of the world. You're the whole way through, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, that we know in Daniel that that's about the end of the world. We know in this place in Matthew it's about the end of the world. And then all of a sudden I'm going to give you a smackdown at the end. And right as we get towards the end, I don't know how far in, who knows? I let the Spirit lead it. As we get going towards the end, I'm going to smack you down with this one piece, and then you're going to say, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How is that possible that that's the same word? You see, for I'll come back to this in a second. For those that have been in the ministry for a bit, you will have heard this before, and maybe if you've been around for a bit and you've watched those intro videos, you've come to watch this video again. And this video again is a very difficult one to swallow. And for the longest time, I never wanted to do the video. And I don't do it because it's like, oh, look at what's going to happen. No, 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 no. But when you understand who hasn't had something yet happen for them, you realize that something must. And when you understand this and you see it played out and revealed to you right here in Scripture, you're going to say, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But before you really go down that trail, you have to come to this playlist. This is the playlist right here. One sec. This is the playlist right here that we recommend everybody come to. Take 30 minutes out of your life to study the revelation of who the Gospels are speaking to. This is just the intro to it. Here's the printout right here. I read from it. You can go into the right here. Okay, into the description box. Download it for yourself. Read it and make notes along the way. And you are going to be blown away because you're finally going to understand the differences in the Gospels. You're going to finally understand that everything we've been taught had a foundation in Matthew. Every time we go to talk prophecy, we go to the Gospel of Matthew. Almost like Mark and Luke don't even exist. Almost like they don't even have discourses, and people like to just go in there and cherry pick some of the things they like. When you realize for the first time in your life who the synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke are speaking to, and you realize that at the end of days it's Luke, Mark, and Matthew, that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, your scriptural understanding is going to explode. And you're going to start to really get excited more than you ever have before. All of those questions that seem to be contradictions, that clearly had to have been contradictions if you did not understand this revelation truly and crystal clearly of who the Gospels are speaking to, it had to be understood as a contradiction. The church has said, well, it's just a perspective. But there were too many things that didn't fit when it came to lining the Gospels up together. And the reason is the same as today's video is touching on, is it's because within each Gospel and the stories that took place is prophecy built into them. And it's because they're speaking to three different groups. Luke speaks to the bride of Christ, to the pre-trib group. Mark speaks to the sleeping church, those who weren't watching, those who were just in the world, caught up in the things of the world. Oh, sure, they might believe in Jesus, but they weren't ready. They weren't watching. They were still distracted by the things of the world. And then Matthew is to Judah, okay? And when we say in Mark to the sleeping church, to those that aren't ready, those that aren't watching, that it means the world. It means the house of Israel that is grafted in with the Gentiles. And then Judah is separate. Judah is to the Jews. You see, Once you begin to understand that, then you could go look at those discourses, which we've got the 12th video here, which is the discourses revealed. It will blow your mind because you'll see the reason for those differences in the discourses and all the gospels is because they're speaking to different portions of time. It really, really will blow your mind when you see it, and you will understand like you never have before. The second intro video is, once you understand who the gospels are speaking to, the revelation of the end of days starts to open to you more and more and more. And when that happens, you're going to realize that the tribulation isn't one set of 7 years, but 2 sets of 7 years. That's right, 2 sets of 7 years. But you know what? That's not bad news. That is great news, because what it means is the pre-trib group goes 7 years earlier than everybody thinks. Because it's not 7, it's 14. So there's the bride of Christ that goes just above 14 years. And if there's 2 7s left that start this fall at Tishri, guess what? There's a period of time now before Tishri begins where the bride of Christ is going to go. And there are only 3 feasts of the Lord. One of them is that first fruits of the wheat harvest. Guess who? That's right. Feast of Weeks, brothers and sisters. So this will really start to blow your mind, but it will make sense. And all of these questions that you've had that people couldn't answer for you will start to make sense. And then you watch this third one and you're going to realize it's all because of Matthew. All of this time, all of this misunderstanding was because all of our lives for hundreds of years, we have been taught from the Gospel of Matthew. It's because we've looked at the Gospels and said, well, these other ones just help fill in the details and give a little bit more understanding. But what they missed is, if that was the case, then the Lord could have put it all in one gospel. But he gave us 3 synoptic gospels. There are 3 different people being spoken to, 3 different groups. Everything is 3s, brothers and sisters. And when you understand that, I'm telling you, everything will change and you will be so excited. You came to this ministry, that you were led, that you were shown this ministry, because all of these questions come to light. It's so exciting. All right. And I always like to start with that, or I generally, somewhere in it, I like to start with that. Oh yeah, right here. Is generally where I like to start with all of this, and especially on a video like today. Because if you are new to this ministry, and this does happen to be one of the first videos you're watching from this ministry, and you haven't gone to watch that playlist yet, then what you're about to understand in today's video is going to jar you. I promise you, it is going to jar you. It is going to say, no, 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 no. But I'm going to lead you the whole way through if you choose to listen to this before going to watch that playlist. I'm going to lead you the whole way through where you're going to naturally see these things that you think you've already understood in Matthew. These things that you think you've already understood in Daniel. And you're going to be saying, by the end, you're going to be saying, no, no, no. But you're going to remember the whole way through. You're going to say, oh, yeah, yeah, that's the end. Yeah, yeah, that's the end. Yeah, yeah, that's the end. And you're going to have no choice but to say, oh, my goodness. If all of those were the end and it's the same word, and every single place it's used means the end, then there must be something else that's going to happen. All right? And you're going to see that. Another thing you guys can do, where you can come and ask all of these questions that you're going to have later, and to share if you need prayer, you want to hang out with people that are like-minded from all over the world, come right here. Click on the website. Come and join us at ministryrevealed.com. Here's the website. You can go to the menu. When you click on the menu, you're going to go to the forum. It takes you a couple seconds to sign up. It's all free. Everything on the website is free. And you can join us there. There's getting close to 1,000 people in the forum, and everybody's sharing all sorts of things. The other thing you can do, like I said, those were intro videos. You're going to begin to understand those things. The next thing you could do is you can get the Ministry Revealed book. Now you might say, oh, I knew he was going to sell me something. Well, no, you can just get the downloaded free PDF. Oh, you don't even want to download a PDF? Fine, listen to the audio. Oh, that's right. You said you don't want to download anything? All right, click right here and go to the book page and read it from the website. Okay? It's not about charging somebody for anything. But if you want a paperback, Amazon has to charge. All right. So you can go get the paperback version from Amazon as well, or the ebook. But you don't have to get it that way. It's just easier. You see, when I share you guys in videos, this is the paperback version. All right. Or sorry, the PDF. Okay. So no need to freak out there. But come and join us. You can come to all these things. You can click right here, go to the videos page, and at the videos page, all of these videos that we have are one-click downloads. The videos are there, and I have so many things open. This might take a few seconds, and we've got a few hundred videos on the link. So you can come down here, and all of these videos that you see on our YouTube channel, you can come here. One-click downloads. One-click downloads. Okay? All for free on your phone, whatever it is you'd like. All right. So let's get going with this. Oh, I'm getting warm in here now. All right. So where I wanted to start today. Well, I guess I could share this little thing. This is just a little fun thing. Everybody knows this, right? Everybody loves to talk about this. And it just struck me the other day. You know, it talks about, what is it? You know, I'm not saying this is the understanding, but maybe this is what it is. Say ye not, there are yet 4 months, and cometh the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. A lot of us, and a lot of people, just about everybody looking in prophecy, has wondered what this timing is in relation to the 4 months. But what dawned on me the other day, in looking at it again, was that we now understand the wheat harvests, right? We understand that there's old wheat and there's new wheat. Not the old because it means it's old and it's all dried up, but that it's called old wheat. It's winter wheat. Okay, it's stuff that's planted late fall, very, very early winter, and it grows right away in the spring. It took root before Passover, and it's the stuff that is harvested at the Feast of Weeks. That is called old wheat. That is used right away. We know that the rapture group, when they come in, they're also wheat. And that wheat is called new wheat. It's like the story of Leah and Rachel. Leah's the older, and she had to be taken first before he could have Rachel. And Rachel was the younger, like new wheat. All right? And so it's the same thing. And we came to understand that the new wheat, which is called spring wheat, is harvested in the fall. Okay, it is harvested at the time of tabernacles. But as it's harvested, it's not brought in, it's not used until the following year at the second day of Passover. Okay, this is the rapture group. That's the great multitude rapture that comes in later. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because if you take the 15th of Sivan as the 7th Sabbath in the for the Feast of Weeks, well, what would be 4 months later? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 months later would be the 15th of Tishri. So what are they expecting? This is the wheat harvest. This is the great multitude wheat harvest. This is when it starts to get brought in, but it's not complete until, as we said, the time of the day 2 of Passover, when it could finally be used. But this is when it starts to be brought in. And Jesus is telling them what? Say ye not, there are yet 4 months? What would yet 4 months be? From the 15th of Sivan to the 15th of Tishri. Because there are 2 wheat harvests. It almost seems like he's having a conversation of them not being aware that, hey, there's 2 wheat harvests going on. There's the old and there's new, right? There's the winter wheat and there's the spring wheat. And it's as if they're watching the spring wheat and saying that the spring wheat isn't ready to be harvested until the time of Tishri. And he's saying, no, look, it's already white and ready. Because the word white there I'm sure many of you guys have seen this before, is the word Luke. Okay? Luke is white. Luke's name means white. The other thing you notice is that it says, lift up your eyes. Okay? Lift up your eyes and look. And what else do we know about a portion of Luke's time when we're told to look up, right? When we're told to lift up our eyes. Right here. Then shall they see the Son of Man. Da, 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 da. Luke 21, verse 28. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. This is the escape as well. This is the escape verse. Just like verse 36 is the escape verse. Just like 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2 is the escape verse. We've understood this now for a little bit, haven't we? This portion here in Luke 21, 25 through 28, right? Men's hearts failing them for fear of looking after those things that are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when we see these things begin to come to pass, when we see these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. This is all about the stone's throw. Is there a collision with the stone's throw up in the sky and it's going to shower and people are going to be freaking out? This is the event, guys. This right here is what we here, myself in this ministry, are expecting to see in the sky between here and here. And I believe it's going to be right around here. But somewhere in this time frame, I don't believe the bride is going to experience the effects of it, but we are certainly going to see it before the escape and the bride is taken out. This is that look up. Lift up your eyes, lift up your head, for the fields are white and ready to harvest. This is precisely the same time we've been looking at. So that was just another little piece I wanted to throw in there for you, that maybe we can understand this in relation to those 4 months early. Because one thing you don't hear many, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody teach on it before. We've talked on it many times, and that again is the 2 wheat harvests. Okay, there's a winter wheat and a spring wheat. There's 2 groups that are considered wheat, the pre-trib and the mid-trib. They're all wheat, but they're 2 groups of wheat is what we come to find out. All right. So knowing that makes a difference. So now that we apply the 2 wheat scenarios, we have exactly 4 months between the 2 wheat harvests. All right. Now let's get into this word right here. This word called end. Okay. It's completion. It is the consummation. It is the end. It's used 6 times in the Greek. Okay. You can see it right here. It's in Matthew 13, Matthew 24, and Matthew 28. But when Mike shared this with me and he showed me this place where it was, and he said, oh, did you ever look at the definition of this one? Somebody just shared it. I don't know that I had looked in it and gone to do a word search on it, because if I had, I would have probably already done this video. All right. But this is what's so awesome. You see, I use this program right here called eSword. I've shared it many times. All you guys know about it. This is called eSword. It's free on PC, maybe a couple bucks now, maybe $5 a year on Apple or whatever. But when you get it, you can get KJV, KJV Plus. You can get all sorts of things, right? All sorts of Bible translations. I use the KJV Plus everything. And, you know, people look at my colors. I've had people ask me many times over the years, you know, what's the thing with the colors? And I don't have a specific thing with my colors. I have an overall thing that I do, but it's like this image, just where all these connections are and certain highlights why I have them to that connection and this connection, but it's everywhere. All right. So I couldn't really flat out explain it to you, but this program eSword is awesome. And the reason it's so awesome is you get the Greek words and the Hebrew words. You get the definitions right at your fingertips. This is like walking around with a big Strong's Concordance and the Bible in your hands, all right here at the tip of your fingers, from one to the other, going in depth, going from one word to go to a further word to get to the root word. When you understand how to use those words and how to go in and see what they connect to and where they're from, it is awesome. And many of you are better at using it than I am. I use it very basically, right? It's very basic for me. I highlight my words. I use the KJV plus. I go to the words. I highlight those words to the next words. I don't use all of the other features like some of you are really good at doing. All right. I wish I had learned it that way back then. But you see, here's another one that I use, which is called blueletterbible.org. Because Blue Letter Bible will give you long definitions and show you the connections between the New Testament and the Old Testament and places where this is used besides, in this case, the Greek. All right. So you see this word end being used in the Greek because, of course, it's a Greek word and it's used 6 times, right? It's the G4930. But you want to know what's so awesome about it? Is it's telling us this same word is the same connected word in the Hebrew found in Daniel chapter 9 and in Daniel chapter 12. Well, how about that? Because you see, anybody who is a 7-year thinker, this won't bother them, who refuses to believe or to take the time to study and understand that the real truth is 14 years. I'm going to spend a little bit of time in this showing you that the truth really, truly is 14 years. And I'm going to show you how it's built and how the scriptures reveal it to us. I'm not going to go into everything. We've got videos on that on the 14 years, but I'm going to show you from Daniel and go to these other places to show you how it's built from different angles. But the reason I'm going to do it is because we're going to the word end. We're going to the word end. But we're doing it from what it said was the Hebrew correlated words. All right? So let's have fun. Let's have fun seeking this out, studying into it, and then come back and build back into that word end. It's so awesome. Like I said, I'm leading you guys, all right? I am leading you in so that even a 7-year person, when they see this, may not say, oh, okay, I believe in the 14 years. They're going to still be stuck maybe in their 7-year thinking. But it doesn't matter, because when they see where these words are, they're going to say every single time, oh yeah, that's the end. That's the end. That's the end. So by the time I smack you at the end, you're going to say, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? It's going to happen again? All right, watch this. Let's go here. We all know this quite well, right? Everybody loves Daniel 9. Unfortunately, it was understood incomplete, right? 70 weeks is 70 weeks of years, all right? It's 70 weeks of years. And we now understand where that 70 is. We're in it. From Tishri last year to Tishri this year, we are in the 70th year. Because we know, as you guys all know, those have been following at least for a little bit, you know that when Israel came into the land, Leviticus 19 said, look, when you come into the land, the first 3 years you can't take from it, from the trees that you plant. The first 3 years you can't take. The 4th year is mine. And from the 5th year forward, it's yours. And it just so happens when they came into the land, there was 4 years left in their Shemitah cycles. And their 5th year began a new Shemitah cycle, just like Leviticus showed. And so starting in the 5th year, 1952, 1953 being year 1, that means 2021 to 2022, Tishri to Tishri, is the 70th year. This is where we are, and we have been beating it down. We have understood it, all right? So this 70 weeks is what? 70 years, okay? Weeks of years. And now listen to what it says. In verse 25, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem means Jerusalem must have been attacked. Before a commandment to go in to restore it can take place, it must have been attacked. Unto Messiah the Prince, okay, this is to Jesus, shall be 7 weeks. Well, you see, this was weeks of years. This is weeks of years, which means there's going to be a commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince, but it's going to be 7 weeks or 7 years before the actual building takes place. One of the giveaways is this comma and. And for those that want to know, you can go into our playlist, that same playlist, and you can go watch the video on Daniel 9. Okay, so I'm not going to go into everything, but that video will help give you understanding as well of the proper counting of the end of days for this. So you realize this is 7 weeks where they of years, so 7 years where they're going to be removed from the land. That's the first 7 years of seals. That's why Israel, Jerusalem is attacked first. Then they're going to make a decree to restore and to rebuild it. And then bam, a second attack is going to come. And I believe the first attack is in August. The second attack is by the end of September of 2022. And they will be removed from the land for 7 years. Only a group will be sent in from this decree, from this commandment to restore, and they will only get the foundation done during the first 7 years of seals. This is that 7 weeks as 7 years. When you have comma and, it means it's a separation of time, but added to it. So then you've got 7 weeks or 7 years, comma and, meaning plus 62 weeks. Now, this is something that throws people off a lot. So this is why I wanted to go into this as we go into this word end, as we build into it, all right? It's a great way to build into it, and I'm going to help people understand this 14 years here. Because here's 2 weeks. So if everywhere there's weeks, so far it equaled years, well then for sure we've got at least 7 and 2, that would be 9. But then you have 60, which is 60. But they're not the same as weeks. So an argument can be made, and this, I've had people ask me this many times over the years. How can you say that 62 weeks equals the first 3.5 years of trumpets? Okay, this is the first 7 of seals, and there's no mention about it because this is about the house of Judah. This is about the rebuilding and so forth. So the 7 weeks of years, the 7 years of seals, they've already been removed from the land. And during these first 7 years is all about the house of Israel. It's about the world. It's World War III and the Antichrist and all that stuff that takes place. When those 7 weeks or those 7 years are over, it's now going to be the rebuilding, as it says here. Okay, the street and the city, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. We know the temple is going to be built during this time, from the beginning of the first 7 years of trumpets. But people have often asked and said, okay, we see these 7 weeks as years, sure, that's the end of seals, but how can 62 weeks equal 3.5 years? If everywhere weeks is, this should only be 2, and then maybe the 60 could be 60 in actual weeks. So if you took it as 60 being 60 in actual weeks, then it would equal what? 1 year and 2 months. Okay? 52 and 8 more weeks. So we're still pretty close to 3 years and 6 months, but it works out to, this would work out to 3 years and 2 months. Now you say, oh man, well, is it really possible that, is this going to actually be 3 years and 2 months? No, I believe, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to show you guys now, that I believe this 60, even though it's mentioned just like everything else, just as being 60, I believe what could have happened is another form, another portion could have been added to it. And I'm not just saying this out of the blue. I can prove it scripturally, but it's not in the definition, okay? It's clearly not in the definition of 60 here. So we have to go to other places to see, if we can define, is it really representing 3.5 years where the city and the streets and the wall, right, the temple's being rebuilt? Is it really going to be 3.5, or is it really 3 years and about 2 months? Well, let's go to Genesis 15. And this is one place where I used it as an argument in the past, because verse 15, or no, 5. I think it's verse 5. Here, right here. Genesis 15, verse 5. And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. Okay, what's the word? Both words are 5608. 5608 means to score with a mark. Okay, to score. To score. What was it in Daniel chapter 9? In Daniel chapter 9, we're told 60, right, and 2 weeks. Is it possible that this could have also been used in the description of this 60? Meaning to score, that would be like, let me show you. Say like the word root, okay? It's like me putting a line through the R, me putting a line through the O, through the O, through the T, okay? Like you're crossing it off, like you're scoring it with a mark. You're scoring it off. So it's like 60 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, and then it looks like a division of 2 at the end, like a 3.5 week type of thing. But that's very speculative, isn't it? That's very kind of, I had to go elsewhere to show, is it possible that they missed something, like an additional definition here? So we have to go to other places now, don't we? So how about we go to one that we know very well? Okay, this is more so for newer people. We can go to Psalms 90 and 10. And in Psalms 90 and 10, it's a very famous one. We know it here in this ministry. We've revealed the understanding of it. What do we see again? The days of our years are 60 and 10. Okay, 60 and 10 is 60 and 10. This is 70 years in this case, right? So what was the start of Daniel? Well, it was 70 years. So here it is, right? The days of our years are 70. And if by reason of strength they be 80. So now, excuse me, now we've got 70 to 80. You've got 10 years. So if by reason of strength, okay, yet is their strength labor. See, it's pain, travail, sorrow, okay? It's labor and sorrow. It's affliction and trouble and wickedness. Means tribulation. Means from 70 to 80 is tribulation. And then it says, for it is soon cut off. Oh, there we go again. So we got 10 years, and we got another portion of time that only tells us soon cut off. So you've got what? 7 years plus 3 years, and then you've got another place where it says soon. Well, what did Daniel say? 7 years, right? 7 years, 60 and 10. We know it's 3 years and change, maybe. So this doesn't really seem to help, does it? It brings us to that same 10 years and a little bit. So it kind of seems like, oh, now what? And then what do we see? So whatever this soon cut off is, it's the same matching portion as Daniel's, where it was this 60 and 10. Now, we've been able to prove that it's 14 years because of so many other places, but I'm going to show you how to understand this a little bit more as we continue to go through this. Because then it finally says, and we fly away. This "and we fly away" is a direct reference to Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, which is the time of mid-trumpets, when it says, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into a place where she is nourished for a time, comma, and times, comma, and half a time. That's 1 plus 2 plus a half. That is 3.5 years. See? Wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness. So when we go into Psalms 90 and 10, we've got clearly 70 to 80. Then we've got a soon short period of time. And then we have 3.5 years. So we know we've got the 10 and we've got 3.5. That's 13.5 years. So when you understand the 14 years, it becomes a clear assumption that it's not 13.5, that it's 2 sets of 7, that it's the 14 years. However, in Psalms 90 and 10 and in Daniel, it seems still a little murky, a little mysterious. But let me go back to Daniel again real quick to show you Daniel's final portion, which causes people confusion. And it all comes confusion because of the 14 compared to 7. So what ends up happening during this first 3 years and 2 months of trumpets, or the first half of trumpets, we see that the city and the street, the temple is going to be rebuilt. And it says after those 62 weeks, okay? So not the first 7, but after these 62 weeks, okay? When the rebuilding was taking place, which was unto Messiah the Prince, which means he had to be here, shall Messiah be cut off. So by mid-trumpets time frame, there's going to be a cutting off of Messiah. And this dovetails into the last video that we did, where Messiah, we've proven in previous videos, but we brought it up again, that Messiah tells us at the time of the falling away of the Laodicean church, not only now in its application, but in the future application, is when he's the true witness, the martyr witness, right? So here we are at mid-trumpets now, and it says he says Messiah is cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come, this is when Satan is cast down and the pit is opened, that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay, because the city and the street, the temple was rebuilt. So now Satan being cast out, the pit is opened, and they're going to come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. So there's going to be an end of the flood, and it shall be the end of the war. So which war is this? Okay, we go back to Revelation chapter 12, and what does it say when they fly away into the wings of the wilderness? Well, we go to verse 15 of Revelation 12, and it says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So when does this coming after them with a flood happen? At the mid-trumpets. But again, this brings clarity to the second half of trumpets, of this clarity of 3.5 years, but we're still missing some clarity in relation to the first half of trumpets. Is it, what is this 10 plus a short period of time? Does it really equal 10 in 2 months? Or does it equal 10 in 6 months? Right? Well, let's take it to the next place, because now we're really looking to try to find the amount of time of the first half of trumpets. We can see that it was 7 weeks in Daniel. We can see that there was 10 in Psalms 90 and 10, and then that short period of time, which is the same as Daniel's 7 and then 3 and maybe 3 and 2, right? So they're both 10 and a little bit, which is the first 7 of trumpets, and to pretty much the first half, sorry, the first 7 of seals, and to pretty much the first half of trumpets. So let's see if we can clarify it a bit more, because we also saw in Daniel chapter 9, let's go back to Daniel chapter 9. In Daniel chapter 9, we also saw, connected with that flood portion, okay, The end thereof shall be with the flood. So he goes after them with the flood. So now we know that when he goes after them with the flood and the woman flies away on the wings of an eagle into the wilderness, we know that there's 3.5 years left, because it was time and times and half a time. So, like I just said, we've got now that second half of trumpets cleared up. So we're trying to understand this first half of trumpets. So what we have next here is unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Well, how long is this war supposed to last? Well, again, we go to Revelation, and this is where we start to be able to grasp this understanding. Because what we find out is that in Revelation chapter 11, when the two witnesses who prophesied 1,260 days. So they're prophesying for the first half of trumpets for 1,260 days, which is what? Is it 3 years and 2 months? 3 years in a mystery amount of months in soon? No, it's 3 years and 6 months. So now we suddenly get this understanding of 1,260 and that it's 3 years and 6 months. Now we have a problem though, because we have to be able to prove that this is actually the first half of trumpets. Well, here's one way we do it. It says when their time was done, when they had finished in Revelation 11 verse 7, and when they had finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit. Hello. When does the beast ascend out of the bottomless pit? The beast ascends out of the bottomless pit at the fifth trumpet. The fifth trumpet is mid-trumpets. So if the fifth trumpet is mid-trumpets, when the beast ascends out of the bottomless pit, look at what it says. It's telling you that at mid-trumpets, he shall make war against them. Many people, we've been taught, I remember hearing about this, and even myself many years ago, you would look at this and you'd think, oh, it's just going to be a quick war. It's just going to be one's going to kick them and beat them and it's done. No, it's not going to be quick. There's a period of time that's called war that is made against them. It is not one day or a couple days. This war is going to last for 2.5 years of the final 3.5 years of trumpets. Now you say, wait a second. You just showed that when they finish their testimony for the first half of trumpets, which is 1,260 days, and this war that breaks out at mid-trumpets is going to last not 3.5 years like we just showed them flying away into the wilderness, but of those 3.5 that remain, it's only going to last for 2.5. This war? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And let me show you how this can all be proved out. When we go to Daniel, where am I? When we go to Daniel chapter 12, look at what it says. In Daniel chapter 12, he's calling out to the angel. He's like, man, how long? How long is this going to be? And he and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, comma, and a half. Notice there's no and here. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, there was an and here. So it was 1 plus 2 plus a half. In Daniel 12, it's not. It's 1, 2, and a half, because there's no plus between time and times. There's no and. So this is 2.5 years. So how long is this portion of time of this war going to last against the two witnesses? You see? How long is it going to last? Well, at mid-trumpets, at the cutting off of Messiah, this battle breaks out with a flood that goes against them, that causes them to fly away into the wilderness for the final 3.5 years of trumpets. But then a war breaks out against the two witnesses that lasts for the 2.5 years that he's crying out about in Daniel chapter 12. Which means that group that flew away on the wings of an eagle from the flood are gone until the end of the 14th year. But this only takes us now to what? The end of 13 years. We had 7. We've got 3.5, 2.5. That's 13 years. That means there's 1 year left to go. There's still that final year, which means at the end of the 13th year. Remember what I said? It's at the end of the 13th year that Messiah returns feet down on the Mount of Olives. Okay? You've got your 7 years of seals. You've got your 7 years of trumpets. You have your first 3.5 of the Son of Man and the rebuilding taking place. Then you have the pit opening, 2.5 years. So you had 1, 2, 3.5 of this one of 11. Then you've got half of 11, 12, 13. So by the end of the 13th year, what happens? The 2 witnesses are killed. We read that it was at the end of the 6th trumpet, in the same day, the 2 witnesses are killed. Their bodies lie in the streets for 3.5 days, and then boom, they stand up, and the 2 witnesses go up to the Father. This is at the end of the 13th year, or at the end of the 6th year of trumpets, which means there's still a group of people hidden out in the wilderness, protected until it's all over. That 1 year, as we've been teaching here many times over the past several months, is that Matthew chapter 24 as it was in the days of Noah. It's going to be that literal fulfillment, but this time not with water, but with fire. When the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. You see, but before he comes down on the Mount of Olives, he told us that he was one of the 2 witnesses. Right? And we know what happens to the 2 witnesses. This is what we're leading to in this word again that's going to reveal this to us. But I want to bring still a little bit more clarity of this to you, because you saw that we can see the 7 weeks. And there's this, 3 and 2, maybe 3.5. And we get the same thing over in Psalms 90 verse 10. But now we're starting to see specific numbers, aren't we? In the book of Revelation, we just covered that in 11 for the first half of trumpets, when the 2 witnesses are prophesying that they're going to do it for 3.5 years. So for the first 1,260 days of trumpets, or the first 3.5 years of trumpets, while the city and the streets and all that is being rebuilt, you see, that is that portion of time. But when they finish their testimony, this is when Satan is cast down, the pit is opened, and war breaks out against them. We now know that this portion of time is connected to when they flee away, okay, when they fly on the wings of an eagle. And we're told that when they do, the way to count it is time and times and half a time. And Revelation 12 had time, times, and a half. Okay, so they had 2.5 of those final 3.5. So we've got this reference of time and times and half a time, or time, times and a half a time, that are the reference to the second half of trumpets. But the first half of trumpets, we're given what? 1,260 days. So he takes a group to a place prepared in the wilderness at the end of seals, at the beginning of trumpets, and they're going to be there for what? They're taken away for 1,260 days, the first half of trumpets. What was Revelation chapter 11 about the 2 witnesses prophesying? Meaning, while the 2 witnesses are here prophesying, that group is taken into the wilderness. And how long is the first half of trumpets? 1,260 days. So you see, you've seen this happen with pastors that teach on prophecy, because they only understand 7 years, they have to overlap something, right? Don't you think that if the Lord wanted us to think that time, end times, and half a time, and 1260 days were to mean the same period of time, he would have called it the same period of time. But he didn't. But now you say, well, what about the portion of seals? If this is the first half of trumpets, and the time, end times, and half a time is the second half of trumpets, how can we account for seals? Well, we go to Revelation chapter 13. In Revelation chapter 13, we see the beast that was a leopard, the one that was a feet was the bear, the mouth of the lion. The dragon gave him his power. And listen to what we have. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. How many of you have ever heard where they tell you that 42 months and 1260 simply means the same thing, so they just overlaid on top of each other? It's not true. There's a reason we've got 3 different ways of saying these numbers. Do you realize if we go back to Revelation 11, we were also told that he would tread the Gentiles for 42 months before the 1260 days begin of the 2 witnesses. So we have 3 periods of time that show 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. But in reverse, it's 3.5 of trumpets. It's 3.5 of the first, the 3.5 of the last half of trumpets. Then you got the 1260, which is the 3.5 of the first half of trumpets. And then you've got 42 months, which is the second half of seals to the end of the 6th year. And look, we can prove this to you. Watch this. In Daniel chapter 7, in Daniel chapter 7, when we compare what we just read in Revelation chapter 13, we see all the characters right here. You see, the first one that goes after Jerusalem and scatters Israel is the lion. Then you see the bear. The bear is Russia. The bear with the lion will begin World War III. And then you see the leopard. That's the control center out of Germany that we see building all through Klaus Schwab and all those guys. That's the leopard. That is where the control system of the beast system is going to come from. And then look what we see. Boom! This 4th beast, the 10 horns. And this is when he is going to take rule. And he's going to rule for 42 months. This is Revelation chapter 13, beginning right here. This is the 42 months that he is going to reign till the end of the 6th year of seals. When he reigns until the end of the 6th year of seals, this is why they say at the end of the 6th seal, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the wrath of the Lamb is come, right? This is it right here. This is the Ancient of Days. This is the Lord. This is them coming on heavenly Mount Zion at the end of the first 6 years of seals. And then the beast is killed. You see, the rest have their dominion taken away. Their power is taken away. But out of all those leaders, it's only the Antichrist that was killed. Yes, probably millions of people killed in that battle too. But out of those leaders, only the Antichrist is killed. And look who's given dominion. The Son of Man. The Son of Man. This coming here of the Son of Man is the beginning of trumpets. Well, it's the 7th year of seals, but when the rebuilding takes place, it's the beginning of trumpets. And this brings us back to Daniel chapter 9, when they will start rebuilding unto Messiah the Prince. So when you look at it in this way, what we saw was Satan was going to rule for 2.5 years. When the pit, he's cast down and the pit is opened, he's going to have 2.5 years to rule and reign, and Antichrist back on the scene for the last 2.5 years of the 6 years of trumpets. And the first 3.5 years, the Son of Man is here, right? It's that Daniel 7, the city and the streets and everything's being rebuilt. Daniel 9. What we saw in Daniel 7 when he came was the end of the 6th year of seals, so in that 7th year. And you had the Antichrist, who was ruling for 42 months in the second half of seals, which leaves 2.5 years in the beginning of tribulation of seals starting this fall, which is starting with the lion and the bear and the leopard. All of this together is World War III and the system being finalized and put in place so that when Antichrist is given his power to continue for 42 months, that's when he takes his power. So what did we see? We saw that Daniel said 7 weeks, first as years. Then it was about 3 years and something, and a little bit. And then we saw it was 2.5 years of a battle. And then there was still one more year. When we went to Psalms 90 and 10, it said 10 years and a little bit, and then 3.5 years to the end of the 14th year. When we just went into the numbers in Revelation, we saw that there was 42 months. Then we know the Lord, because it's the Shemitah year, right? The 7th year when he shows up, which is going to be the sealing of the 144, the rapture of the great multitude, a covenant made with all nations. And then you have what? You have the 1260 days of the 2 witnesses. And then you had the time and times and half a time, or the time times and half a time, which would bring you either to the end of the 13th year and the other one to the end of the 14th year. So the only thing that was left is saying, well, how long is the first portion of seals? It's 2.5 years. Because we already know that the total was 10, and then a short period of time, and then 3.5. And we already know Daniel 9 said it was 7 before the time of Messiah, and then the short battle, and then one more year. So we can show this over and over and over again that indeed it is 14 years, and it's the reason why in the typology, Paul told us, I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. This is the escape of the bride of Christ. They go to the third heaven. I believe this is happening this June of 2022 to the absolute best of my ability of all the revelation we've been given. This was caught up to paradise, is that 7th year right here, is that 7th year of seals after the Lord has come on heavenly Mount Zion, when he comes to the Ancient of Days in Daniel 7, and dominion was given to him after the Antichrist was killed at the end of his 42 weeks or 42 months. See? And then what does he say? Now I am come the third time, but this time he's coming to them. What would that third time be? At the end of the 14, he said, you see? So if it was above 14 years, and this starts at Tishri 2022, well, there's an above portion right here. And it's the Feast of Weeks. So now, that was really to maybe give a little refresher to those who had been around for a bit. But now we want to focus in on this word end. And there was a reason I was building all this up in Daniel. Because in Daniel chapter 9, it's, you know what, it's so interesting too. I've often tried to understand, going back and listening to pastors that taught this about Jesus's first coming, and I don't have a clue. I don't know how they did it. I don't understand it. You know, the commandment to restore and to build unto Messiah the Prince. When was there a commandment to restore unto Christ that was connected to 70 AD? There wasn't. What do you mean? They were rebuilding the walls in troublous times while Christ was there? No, they weren't. What was the flood that chased them all away in the beginning of the war that happened after the 70 years? It was one of those things that I always, and I think probably 99% of you listening that have heard these teachings before have also understood that too, that you said, yeah, I never really fully understood Daniel 9. I could never grasp the way they had been teaching it. It's because it's prophecy. But you see, so going back to the beginning of this, what do we have? 7 of seals while they're removed from the land by the lion. Okay, World War III breaks out. Then Antichrist against Christ takes his position for the second half of trumpets. Then the Lord returns on heavenly Mount Zion at the end of the 6th seal. He's brought, as we saw, to the Ancient of Days, and dominion is given to him after the Antichrist is killed. Messiah then had the 144,000 sealed. The great multitude rapture comes in that 7th year at the time of Passover, right? From the time of tabernacles and then finally completed at the time of Passover in that 7th year. Then the 7th seal takes place. That 7th seal says it's about the time of half an hour. That is not connected to this mystery portion. It's the final 6 months of the first 7 years of seals. That's why it's after the 144 and the rapture of the great multitude. He's going to make a covenant with all nations at that time when he comes. You see, we've been told all our lives that that's the Antichrist. It's not. It's Messiah. And Zechariah reveals that to us, because in Zechariah chapter 11, it says that the covenant that he made with all nations, he had to break in one day. You see, we've had all this misunderstanding because we've all been taught from Matthew. So what do we see? We've now got this 7 weeks. We just covered it right to the end of the 7 weeks or 7 years. Now the rebuilding is going to take place. It's the first 3.5 years of trumpets. And then Messiah is cut off. It's that first 1,260 days of trumpets. And then Messiah is cut off. Okay? That's because Satan has been cast down. The pit is open. The Antichrist is even brought back. And the false prophet is there with them too. He wasn't killed, remember? And now what happens? Messiah is cut off. The 2 witnesses, they've completed their testimony. And now war breaks out against them. First of all, those that were in Jerusalem that were the Lord's are now fleeing on the wings of an eagle. And they're going to a place protected in the wilderness for the final 3.5 years of trumpets. But in that time, something happens. A war breaks out against the 2 witnesses. And we know that of those final 3.5 years of time, end times, and half a time, we know that Daniel 12 told us that it would be in this portion, not the full 3.5, but that it would only be times and a half, meaning 2.5 of those final 3.5 years. That's when this war comes to an end. When does this war come to an end? When the 2 witnesses are killed, of which Messiah said he was one. He was the true martyr witness. That's what we talked about. We were sharing in the last video. Well, guess what happens now in Daniel? After all this, there's what? 7, 3.5, 2.5. That's 13 years. That means there's 1 week of years left. Well, isn't that funny? There's literally 1 week of years left. There is 1 year left in the 14 years. All of this to here was the 13th year. But we know this war only lasted 2.5 of the 3.5. What do you think this final one is? You got it. It's the final year. So Messiah was cut off after 3.5. War breaks out against him as one of the two witnesses. They're killed at the end of the 13th year, or the end of that 6th year of trumpets. Boom, resurrected. And then what? The Lord returns, feet down in all power and authority, feet down on the Mount of Olives. How can we prove this out? In this final year, listen to what happens. He shall confirm the covenant with many. It said confirm. He's confirming the covenant with many. What does that mean? He's prevailed now. He has prevailed, and now he's returning to strengthen the covenant that he had made with all nations at the end of seals to the start of trumpets. See, that final year, that 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he, Christ, the Son of Man, is going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Why? Because Satan was here, the pit was open, the chaos and the abominations that they did in the temple and all over the world. He's going to cause it to cease and destroy them. And for the overspreading of abominations, which who made? The one who confirms the covenant? No. The abominations were made by these guys when they cut off Messiah and they went after the two witnesses and war broke out and all the craziness and ugliness and abominations that they did. And he, Christ, the Son of Man, shall make it desolate, even until the consummation is determined, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. This poured out are the bowl judgments. Those bowl judgments will happen, excuse me, right towards the very end of trumpets. And I believe they're literally only going to last probably a week. I don't think they're going to last much longer, because when you read what they are, there's no way. Now, so what did we have here? This is that final 14th year. And what did we see? Even until the consummation. So at the final end, we have this word completion. We have this final word called completion. Look at what it told us. This Greek equivalent time of the end of that 13th and the time of the 14th year is connected to that final year. Or look what else it told us. What about Daniel chapter 12? Daniel chapter 12, go to verse 13 and listen to what it says. But go thy way, Daniel, till the end be, for thou shalt rest and shalt stand in thy lot at the end of the days. At the what? At the end of the days. So what do we see again? We see again this reference to the end being connected to what? The final year. That end of the 13th to that final 14th year. Which means the very end of the 13th, like see this line right here? It's like right in that time frame. Right in that time frame. It's the time of the end. It's this timing of the end of days. It's a period within the end of days. Watch this. Let's go a step further now. And let's go to Matthew chapter 13. And let's see if this is still going to be connected. Now, you got to understand, all the words referenced to where it's found in Daniel could have been end anywhere. The word end is all over the place. These were very, very specific ends that related to the time of the end of the 13th to that final year. In the actual end of days, the literal end of days at the time of the end of the world. So far, not one of these end of days time frames of Daniel 9:27 or Daniel 12:13, none of them refer to the is that we're in. None of them refer to the actual time of Christ when he came the first time. It's all about the end of days to the time of the end of the world. So let's just see if this is true. Let's keep looking into this word. Now let's go looking into the Greeks of it, all right? In the Greeks of the word, look at that. Those who have been around this ministry for a little while, we talk about this all the time, which is why I told new people to go watch those intro videos. Because when you understand who the Gospels are speaking to, and you see something like this happen, that at no point, see Hebrews, at no point is it in any other gospel, in particular synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's only found in the Gospel of Mark. Do you think that's just coincidence? Sorry, in the Gospel of Matthew. Do you think that's just coincidence? That it happens to be in the Gospel of Matthew over and over and over again and only found in Matthew? Of course not. We know better in this ministry, right? It always relates to the end, right? To the 7 years of trumpets and to the end of it. So let's go on. Let's continue in this theme and see what we can discover. We see that it was in 39, 40, 49 of Matthew 13. Let's start in verse 38. 38, 39, end of the world. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. Okay, let's go back into 38. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil, Satan. When do we know Satan shows up? Right here. Satan shows up at mid-trumpets, at the 5th trumpet, when he's cast down, like we read in Revelation 12, like we read when the pit is open. It's Satan being cast down when the pit is open. And so what do we see? The harvest is the end of the world. There's that word. The entire completion. And the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned with fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. You see? Well, now check this out. And then it goes on to say, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. What do we know about this? When is this furnace of fire and the wailing and gnashing of teeth? We're going to cover that in a minute. How about we go to, what was the other one? 49. It says, so shall it be at the end of the world. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's repeating it again. Where do we know this takes place? During the is? The is from the birth of Christ until the moment of the escape. The was is the Old Testament till Christ's birth. The is to come is from the escape till the end of the world. So let me put that rhetorical question out there. Where is this word for the end of the world connected to? Are you going to try to tell me that this is connected to when Christ came 2,000 years ago? Is that when Christ came, was that when all the tares were gathered up and burned in the fiery furnace? And all the weeping and gnashing of teeth took place? Or do you understand that it's at the actual literal end of days? Of course it's at the literal end of days, right? It's not a mystery to us. We've understood these things. Well, let's see another place where we find it. We know this one very, very well in this ministry. We can go now to Matthew chapter 24. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 3, it says, "And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming?'" For those that don't know, if you do a search on this word, it is only shown up in the Gospel of Matthew. And in every time it shows up in the Gospel of Matthew, it's only in Matthew's discourse. Because they're asking for the sign of thy coming. In what book are we in? Matthew. This is pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib at his return. So they're asking him, when is his literal coming of the Son of Man? Let me show you these other places. See, at the coming of the Son of Man, it's all about when he's literally coming, the Son of Man. The Son of Man is coming, is returning, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Remember, I told you that final year when the Lord comes at his coming, feet down on the Mount of Olives, it equals the literal days of Noah that we're told about only in Matthew's discourse. That's why out of all the discourses, it's only spoken of in Matthew. Because the flood in that portion took about 1 year. It's the final year of the Lord here. So when you come back up and you're reading this, when you come back up and we're reading that they're saying, what shall be the sign of thy coming? They're talking about when he comes at the end of that 6th year of trumpets, at the end of the 13th year of tribulation, when he will return feet down on the Mount of Olives. But something happens just before that, right? They're kind of very coinciding in that timing, right? It's like this line that I told you guys between 13 and 14 that this is going to take place. And look at what it says. What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? There it is again. It's only used 6 times. We know that this coming at the end of the world is directly connected to that final year. So that end of 13 to the start of the 14th year, it is directly connected to it. And we've proven this out in the discourses as well. You guys, when you understand these things and you begin to understand these gospels very well, go watch that 12th video in the intro series about the discourses. You're going to understand some awesome things. Let me just show you one thing real quick that is so amazing. When you go to Luke's discourse is drastically different because Luke's discourse has nothing to do with the 7-year period. Luke's discourse is the escape of the bride of Christ first. It is the escape of the bride of Christ for those who are watching and praying, those who are accounted worthy. And the whole world is then going to be caught off guard in this snare. What you come to then understand is what happens next in Luke's discourse is a period of the Son of Man. This 40-day period and then to the 50 days before the lion attacks Israel, or before this first maybe Iran attack in this Middle East war at the beginning of August, in early August. And then a 50-day period to bam, the second attack that will come by the lion. And that will bring about the beginning of the end of days. That will bring about the official beginning of the 14 years, as we saw in Daniel, when they will now be removed for 7 years. All right. This period of time here that we see in Luke's discourse is the period of time of the Son of Man. It's this short portion of time before the first attack takes place against Israel, but after the bride has been taken. There is zero mention of false prophets and false Christs. Okay, not a mention. When you go to Mark's discourse, check this out. Remember how we said the first half of seals was about World War III? The about first 2.5 years of seals is World War III, that the Antichrist doesn't officially have his power yet. Well, guess what? There's no mention of false Christs or false prophets in the first half of Mark's discourse. It's not until the abomination of desolation, which is the mark of the beast, when the Antichrist gets his power now to continue for 42 months. And guess what you see? For false Christs and false prophets show up. That's the second half of of seals. And then what? Then you go to Matthew's discourse. And when you go to Matthew's discourse, what happens at the end of Mark's discourse? Well, the end of Mark's discourse is the end of seals. At the end of seals, Daniel chapter 7 told us that the Antichrist was killed, that the beast was killed, but that the rest had their dominions taken away, but their lives were prolonged. So when Christ, as the Son of Man, is being given his power, is being given his kingdom, only the Antichrist was killed out of those leaders, as I told you earlier. So that means in the first half of Matthew's discourse, we should only see maybe the false prophet. And check this out. In the first half of Matthew's discourse, there's no false Christs, only false prophets. It's not until the midpoint of Matthew's discourse at the abomination of desolation in Matthew, which is now Satan being cast down and the pit opening up. This is why it's standing in the holy place, which is because the temple was rebuilt after the first half of trumpets. And we know that the pit is open. When the pit is open, Antichrist comes back. So now it'll be false prophet and Antichrist again. And look at what happens. And there shall arise false Christs and false prophets. It's revealed right there in the discourses. First half of seals, no false prophet, no Antichrists. Second half, they're both there. Then we know at the end of seals, one of them is killed and the other one still stays. You go to the first half of trumpets, which is the first half of Matthew, Antichrist is gone, only false prophet is there. You get to the midpoint of Matthew, the midpoint of trumpets, bam, the abomination of desolation takes place because the pit is open, boom, Antichrist is back and he's there with the false prophet. It's perfect. It always works out every time. So when they're saying here, what shall be the time of thy coming? This is literally about his return, feet down on the Mount of Olives. And they're saying in the end of the world. You see, we know that his coming at the time of the end of the world, which again, this is the discourse, so this is clearly what? In the is to come. It's the end of the world. Right? It's clearly the end of the world. And in this case, it's that after 13 to the start of the 14th year. So it's in the discourse. This wasn't about Christ in the is when he was here. So let's see a little bit further. Matthew chapter 28. We've done such great teachings on this. It is so exciting. We've shown that the resurrection typologies. All right, go to that intro series again. You're going to see in the intro series a video called pre, mid, and post. They're all true. Okay, pre, as we said, is Luke. Mid is Mark. The return, feet down, post is Matthew. The reason Scripture defines and shows us all three, and people can point to all three, it's because they're all true. But when you're taught from Matthew all your life, your perspective in understanding and being able to understand it all gets all screwed up because you're seeing it through the eyes of Judah, not the eyes of the church that's not ready, not the eyes of the bride that is ready and watching. And in that video of pre, mid, and post, they're all true. We show how the typology in the resurrection story, the typology of the transfiguration story, the typology in the triumphal entry story, In the transfiguration, the triumphal entry, and the resurrection story all show us built within those stories is the revelation of pre, mid, and post. The ones in Luke compared to the ones in Mark, compared to what's being told in Matthew. And we've shown you in Matthew that in Matthew 28 at the resurrection story, you see things like this. There was that great earthquake. What do we see at the end of the sixth seal? The great earthquake. What do we see in in Zechariah chapter 14 when the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives? A great earthquake that splits it in two. And when he comes, what does he come like? Well, according to Matthew 24 as well, he comes as lightning from one end unto the other. So we get these typologies here in Matthew's resurrection story, which is very different than Mark's and very different than Luke's. And then we see things like this. After his resurrection, where is it? After his resurrection, where are we? We saw that that was in the other part. After his resurrection, we saw that the rocks had split, that the veil had rent, and they resurrected, right? We saw that it's in Matthew 27. So what do we see when they resurrect from the dead? That's like what Daniel was told in Daniel chapter 12. So those who put their necks on the line during seals, that will be resurrected in the first resurrection. And those from the Old Testament, like Daniel, that were told, lie in thy plot until the end. You see? That's the time of their resurrection. So let's see if that end, being referenced in the Greek as the similarity to the ones in the Hebrew found in Daniel 9:27 and in Daniel 12, let's see if they correlate. Look at what happens. This is very different in the Great Commission from Mark and Luke compared to Matthew. We have taught on this many times, and it's beautiful. You understand that Matthew and the people that he's speaking to in Matthew are the heads or the 12 tribes. At the end of the tribulation of trumpets, when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives, like we read, this group is the third watch. This group is the group that is going to go out during the millennial reign. And they're no longer going to preach like we read in Mark and Luke's resurrection story. They're only going to teach all nations. There's no need that's going to come up for preaching, because when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives, the whole world will know, and it will be only the teaching of his ways. That's why we read in verse 18 of Matthew 28, Jesus comes and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go read Revelation chapter 11. Let's go have a quick look. Chapter 11, at the beginning of the seventh seal, at the beginning of the seventh trumpet, right? When it begins to sound, we were told in Revelation 10, when the seventh trumpet begins to sound, the mystery is finished. It's over. Okay. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. This is the Matthew chapter 28. The revelation of the end of days is built into the Gospels. This is why the conversations are so different. And listen to what he says. Okay, they're going to go and teach. And then he says, let me read verse 19. Matthew 28, starting in 19. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. Do you know, we've taught on this, we've got teachings on this. This is not our baptism. The bride of Christ, the pre-trib group, the world right now, should be baptized as Acts chapter 2, verse 38. Because it is Christ who came to save us. We are to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins and the receiving of the gift of the Holy Ghost. This has nothing to do with us. This is Matthew. This is to Judah. And this is built in prophecy. Do you understand why it is so different than Mark and Luke? Let's just take Mark's, for example. Look at what he tells them in this Great Commission. First of all, he's upset with them for not believing the testimony of the two witnesses. They're to go preach to every creature. We've done a teaching on that. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And these signs will follow you, and they shall take up serpents. We've taught on these things. And then he's received up to sit on the right hand of God. Because it's at the end of seals that he now takes his position at the right hand of God, and he's now working with the 144,000 is the typology at the time of the beginning of trumpets. You see? When you go to Matthew, the story is completely different. He doesn't wail on them. He's not upset with them. They were to meet him at the mountain. He tells them all power is now his. And there's no longer preaching. It's to go teach them and baptize them in the three names. And then listen how he ends it. Verse 20. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I command you. And lo, I am with you always, even until the end of the world. There it is again. It's starting to get pretty clear, isn't it? Every single place that we have gone to show the connection to the end of the world, at his coming feet down at the end of the sixth year of trumpets, every single one of these connections connected to his final coming feet down and the end of the world that is used these 6 times, the direct correlation are the exact same ones in Matthew chapter, in Daniel chapter 9 and chapter 12. The literal time of the end of the world. Okay? What else did we see within this? We saw that it also said there would be weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? We know that this is what happens for those that are disobedient. So let's go see this portion of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Look at this. The word manifested, wait a second. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. What we end up seeing, oh, that's what I want to show. In Matthew chapter 24, when we see this time of the coming of the Son of Man, right? So we saw in verse 3 that this coming of the Son of Man had to do with this period of the end of the world, the end of the 13th and that start of the 14th year. When we follow this through and we see this time of this coming of the Son of Man, and we know, as I said earlier, it's connected to that final year as the days of Noah, we end up seeing all of this same wording that those who aren't ready, what's going to happen to them? Matthew 24, verse 51. And shall cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There it is again. Weeping and gnashing of teeth. When you go into 25, chapter 25 is at the end of that year. Okay, so when people tell you the foolish and the wise virgins is all about pre-trib, it's not. The foolish and the wise virgins is that final 14th year when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives and then deals with that final year like Noah. That's this time of the foolish and wise virgins. It's all about the wedding story, the big picture wedding story. 13 years, then she can marry. Then he goes and prepares a place. And then it's that final year when he returns to get them, and the bridegroom and the bridesmaids needing to be ready. What do we see when this time also comes? When this time comes at the end, now when it's all over in that 14th year. So it starts this way and it ends this way. What do we see? Verse 30. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then the time of the final judgment. Do you think it's safe to say that all these places where we have found these connections to the entire completion, not a word end that's used all throughout Scripture, but a very specific one that is only used 6 times. Do you think it's safe to say that every one of these usages is directly connected to the end of days? I think it's very safe to say, isn't it? It's crystal clear to say that it's directly connected to the end of days. Well, hold on to your horses, newbies, because what you're about to see now is where I've been pulling you along, where I've been leading you into, because all of this is connected to that final year. All of this is connected to that portion in the last video where I was talking about the 7 churches. We know the end of days revelation of the 7 churches. We know the was of the Old Testament, the is that we're in right now, and how in the end of days, when it plays out over 14 years, we know that Messiah is one of the 2 witnesses. In fact, like we said before in that last video, we know because Messiah himself said he was one of those 2 witnesses. Right? Where are we? Starting verse 14. He is the true witness. Okay? And this word witness, like we revealed in the last video, there's a witness that is a witness of being testimony coming at the beginning, coming beforehand. But then there's also a martyr witness. Like John. John is both. Well, so was Christ. Okay? So are the seals workers. Those who are in Christ. They were witnesses before. They're witnesses like now. The true bride are those who have Christ in them. And they are a witness to when he comes. And we see that in a cloud. That Luke chapter 21. Lift up your eyes. Lift up your heads and look. That is the witness of the bride of Christ that will see him coming. And our redemption is right at that time. We are witnesses like John. We know that there's a group of workers who are part of those witnesses who will be seals workers. And they will also be martyrs during seals, and like John will be. He was a witness, and he as a witness is seeing it, but he was also a witness as a martyr. Christ here told us not only is he a true witness of the beginning because he was the beginning, but he's also the true witness martyr. There's a reason it's in Laodicea. Laodicea, in the end of days revelation of the 7 churches, is the second half of trumpets. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're new, go watch the last video after you watch that intro series. You understand that Messiah is one of the 2 witnesses. You can go watch that video too about the 2 witnesses. We break it all down, and we've shown it from the book of Zechariah. We know that Messiah is one of the 2 witnesses. We know that his typology is Joshua, Yeshua, the son of Nun, from Ephraim. He still had to fulfill his second portion. And we know that whoever the modern day Zerubbabel will be is going to be the other one, responsible for the building of the temple and the rebuilding of the streets, while Joshua while Yeshua, the son of Nun, is the high priest, the one directly communicating, directly connected to the Father. What's he going to be? During the second half of trumpets, what happened? Their testimony ends after 1260 days. And as the true witness, this war breaks out now. The two witnesses are killed, and you say, oh my goodness, what are you saying? Messiah is going to die again? How can Messiah die again? I thought he died once for all. Well, are you sure about that? Have you read your scriptures very carefully? I'm not saying this because I want it to happen. I'm not saying this because I take joy in saying it. I'm saying it because it's revealed in the revelation of the end of days. And when you understand why he's doing it, you don't feel so bad about it. I mean, it's terrible because you know what's coming. You know what's going to happen through a group of people. And he has to rescue them. Do you remember what happened in Luke chapter 19? Watch this. Remember I told you the typology of pre, mid, and post is found in the resurrection stories, is found in the transfiguration, and is found in the triumphal entry? Well, do you remember the triumphal entry in Luke chapter 19 and the immediate story that follows his triumphal entry, which is a typology of the end of days when he comes as the Son of Man, which is also a video in the intro series? The Son of Man at the escape of the bride of Christ. The Son of Man is going to be here for 40 days. He's going to be rejected. The world isn't going to believe he is who he is. And he already told us he's going to be rejected during this time. The world is going to think he's the Antichrist. The Muslims are going to say, see, this is the Dajjal. He is the Antichrist. And the Muslims and the Christians are going to agree. And then boom, 40 days later, he'll be gone. And the Christians are going to be like, oh, I thought the Antichrist was longer. You see? But listen to this. This is that typology built into prophecy, built into the Gospels. So if this is the typology of him coming, built into it in a prophetic understanding within it, listen to what happens when he comes. This is why you read this only in Luke's Gospel. It says, and when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou at least in this thy day, the things which belong to thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. See that? We know we've talked about this a number of times recently. In Isaiah 6, it's the same type of story. In Isaiah 6, we read, starting in verse 8, also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. We know this is a typology of Christ as well, right? So you see, we know this is Isaiah saying it, but we know that it's a typology for Christ. It's prophetic built into it. It's the same thing I'm showing you in the Gospels. And listen to what is said. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not. And see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest or unless they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert and be healed. Doesn't that sound contradictory to everything you've ever heard? They were purposely blinded. They were purposely made their hearts to be fat so they couldn't receive it. They were purposely plugged in their ears so they couldn't hear and understand it. Because if that didn't happen, they probably would have understood it and been converted and healed. And then guess what? There would have been no grafting into the Gentiles. Too bad, so sad, suckers. You see? This is why we pray for the Jews. This is why we give them thanks. This isn't why we do videos on them and bash the Jews and say these are fake Jews and don't believe those Jews. And then We know they've been blinded. We know some say they are Jews who are not Jews. Yes, we know that too. But there's a whole bunch of them that are Jews. It is Jews that are supposed to be in the land for the 70 because it's the time of the house of Judah, where they've got to be removed for 7 so that the Lord can finally build after it rests for 7 years. This is why we pray for them, to give them thanks. Thanks that in their fall we've been grafted in. But Lord knows that he made it so he could save Israel and the Gentiles that were blended with them. It even tells us in the next 2 verses. Then said I, Lord, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate, and the Lord have removed man far away, and the great forsaking in the midst of the land. You'd say, well, oh, that already happened. We also know it's prophetic, don't we? We also know it was connected to when he was here the first time. Well, we also know it's prophetic to the end of days. You see, they were blinded. They were blinded for us, that we should be grafted in. And this is the exact same reason you see this typology given to us after the triumphal entry, when he's saying that it's been hid from their eyes. Why do you think all Jews refused to listen? Or I should say almost all Jews. Only few were made to see, right? Only few were allowed to understand. Everybody else wants to kill Christians, Jews, right? They blaspheme them, they hate them. Why? Because they've been blinded. They're jealous. God made them jealous, just like he said he would. God has used us to make his people jealous. But at the same time, he made it so that they couldn't see, to bring them about to jealousy, because they were still messing up. They were still falling away. They were still being disobedient. So he did this against them, for us, for them. So guess what? If they can't see, and they don't know that Christ is who he was, well, what about them? What about the Jews? Remember, everything is what we call a fractal. From the big story to the medium story to the little story, everything is playing out in fractals. And I always love to use this example. I've used it many times lately. We know that John the Baptist was Elijah. But was he exactly Elijah? No. Did he do the same things as Elijah? No. Elijah was taken in a whirlwind. John was beheaded. It's the typology. They're not the exact same people doing the exact same thing, but the typology is the story. And so if they, the Jews, haven't had their sacrifice, it hasn't had their portion, right? The priestly line within the Levites, within all of them. Something we've talked about, we're not going to talk about it tonight, but we've talked on it many times. We know that there's going to be this falling away. We know that there has to be a sacrifice to still bring these people in. We've showed it when our sister shared with us to look at Leviticus chapter 1. We see that there's an atonement of a bull, right, for the priestly line. We see that there was a male sheep without blemish. That was Christ already, right? At his death and resurrection, at his crucifixion. And we see that there was 2 turtle doves, right? Or young pigeons. This was at Christ's birth. So at Christ's birth, at Christ's death and resurrection as the sheep, and then what? Well, there's still one more as a bull, or the ox. And Christ is called what? He's called the beginning. What's the beginning? The ox. Look what the ox is called. Look at what the ox is called. Hello. You see? There's an atonement that is coming for this priestly line for something that takes place during trumpets. And this atonement is also for Judah. They had been blinded. They have to be made to see. So with all of this in mind, in particular for new people, let me show you something. Because if you'll notice, as I was going through all of this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we covered the ones from Daniel, but there was a sixth one in the Greek. If every single place in the Greek was a direct reference to the end of days, and every reference to the Hebrew meaning of the same word was a direct reference to the end of days, shouldn't this one be as well? Of course, absolutely, 100%. This one will be referenced to the exact same end of the world as the ones in Matthew were. So let's go have a look and see. In Hebrews chapter 9, listen to what it says. All right. It's in verse 9, in Hebrews 9, verse 26. Remember, brothers and sisters, built into the is of the New Testament is no different than what's built into the was of the Old Testament. As Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, as I've said it many times, what was shall be. That's the is to come. And what is the New Testament is to come. What was is coming again. What is coming again. Let's have a listen to this. Okay? In Hebrews 9, verse 22. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. There has to be a shedding of blood. Verse 25. Nor yet that he should offer himself often. Okay? Not that he should offer himself often. Okay? Not often. Not going to be sacrificed often. As the high priests enter into the holy place every year with blood of others. Listen to this. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. Okay? So he's not like a priest going in year after year, year after year. But it was more than once. See, nor yet that he should suffer, that he should offer himself often. It wasn't often. So far it was once. But now listen to the wording. Hebrews 9:26. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world, but now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. What? What? This is the same word, guys. Are you going to try and tell me that I'm making this up? I don't want to hear it. Oh, I didn't make it up. I showed you the literal reference of every single place this term for end of the world and this term for end, and it was directly related to the Lord's time of returning feet down on the Mount of Olives. So what does this say? But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Let's see what this relates to. If in Laodicea, which is the second half of trumpets, And you can go read the book about the 7 churches in the end of days. You can go watch the intro video about the 7 churches and see it for yourself. And now that we know he's one of the 2 witnesses, and he told us directly that he's that true witness, and we know that they prophesy for the 1260 days, then war breaks out for 2.5 years before they're killed. And when they're killed, they're there for 3.5 days. Then they stand up in the same hour. There's a what? Remember I said that great earthquake we saw when he comes as lightning? In the same hour, after their death, they're in the streets for 3.5 days. They resurrect, and in the same hour, there's that great earthquake. A 10th part of the city fell in the earthquake, and were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. Brothers and sisters, there have been earthquakes that have devastated people all throughout history. What on earth do you think makes them so terrified just because of a great earthquake and 7,000 people dying? What do you think it was with this remnant that were so afraid when they saw this that they gave glory to the God in heaven? You got it. The Lord returning, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Look at what happens. It's the end of the second woe. It's the end of the 6th trumpet. And at the beginning of the 7th, soon as it begins to sound, the kingdoms of this world are become the Lord's. And he will now reign forever and ever, his millennial reign. All right, it'll be the beginning of that final year, destroying the enemies, and then that millennial reign kingdom taken over. What do you think this is? This is Revelation chapter 14 at the beginning. That end of 13 to the start of the 14th year. This is his returning, excuse me, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Which means what? They were terrified because another reason is they saw these 2 witnesses lying in the streets for 3.5 days. Suddenly standing in this great earthquake. And then what? In the same hour, the Lord is returning in glory as lightning from one end to the other for the whole world to see. What do we know then takes place in this final year? The kingdom, everything is his. Now they're all upset. There's those freaking out on the earth because they know their time has come. And Satan is bound for 1,000 years. So what did we see? 2 people died. One of them returned, feet down on the Mount of Olives, and everybody gave glory. Everybody that remained gave glory. So what happened? Let's go back to what it says. But now once in the end of the world. If this was meant for simply saying when Christ died, when he was here, in his death and resurrection, when he was here 2,000 years ago, do you think it was necessary for him to say, and now once in the end of the world? Don't you think it's possible that he could have used different wording? Like maybe, and now once has he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself? There would be no need for saying once in the end of the world. This entire little portion could have been taken out. And it totally flowed without it. But that's not what he said. And we know for a fact 2,000 years ago wasn't the end of the world. No matter what your pastors try to tell you. You see, this is one of those things that would make you scratch your head saying, but now once in the end of the world. And so what happens is when people read from this, they think, oh, see, so it's been the end of the world since Christ. You've probably heard that from many pastors over the years. That since Christ, we've been living in this time of the end of the world. No, we haven't. They think that's what it is because when they read things like this, all right? Same like reading in Matthew. You read Matthew 28, the very last verse of Matthew, which in the end of days, going in reverse, is the very end of everything. It's the same wording. It had nothing to do with then. It's built in prophecy. And the whole way, I'm sure I had you saying, yes, it's clearly the end. We know it's the end. It's that 13th, 14th year. Yes, it's the end of tribulation. It's the end of tribulation. It's the time of the end of the world. Yes, it's clear. And now I bring you to 9:26 and I say, and now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Well, how can you say that? The whole way through, you agreed this word used as completion, a very specific word for end, in every single place referred the same thing. And he was what? He told us he was one of the two witnesses. When did the two witnesses die? At the end of the 13th year. Directly, perfectly, 100% connected to the terminology of the end of the world. Let's bring a little bit more confirmation to this. Let's see what else it says in this verse. Unto in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Let's see the word appeared. Let's see where this word appeared, 53:19 shows up. You ready? Here it is. Greek word 53:19. In the synoptic gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Where do we see it? Mark, Mark, Mark. Remember, it's the synoptic gospels that give the story of the three different groups. John is its own. John gives us the timeline of the end of days. It's the 21 years. Okay? Chapter 8 to 21 is the 14 years. Directly related. Let me show you something else for those of you that are new. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the resurrection of Jesus takes place in the last chapter of each one. But in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20 is the resurrection story of Christ. Well, it just so happens that if you take the last 7, 7, and 7 years and line them up with John in this chapters to years, look at where the chapter to year of the 20th year of John is. It's the same place. At the end of 13 years, or at the end of the 20th chapter, what do we see? It just so happens that the resurrection story in John isn't in the final chapter like it is with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And what were we told in verse 9? For as yet they knew not the scripture. For as yet they knew not the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. If it was just rise again, maybe you could say, okay, well, he's doing it again. But rising again from the dead, that means he's repeating rising from the dead. Which means he had to have done it more than once. Why would he have to do it more than once? Because there's a fall. There's a slip sliding away by a group of people during the time of trumpets. And there was a group that was blinded that has to be made to see. Because there's no covenant without the sacrifice of blood. There's no covenant without blood. And as one of the two witnesses, his death and then 3.5 days resurrection again from the dead would be what? Chapter 20. The end of the 13th year. The end of the 6th trumpet. It's the exact same place. So now, again, seeing this in Hebrews, we're looking at 53:19. In 53:19, out of the synoptic gospels, it's only found in Mark. And in Mark chapter 16, Do you want to know why this is important? I bet you guys were probably thinking that this was going to be found in Matthew, because it said that, and he appeared. All right, let's go back to Hebrews, because it says, in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Well, before he can come to be made a sacrifice and be one of the two witnesses, he had to appear first. When does he appear to then become one of the two witnesses? He shows up at the end of seals, remember? Hello. Remember at the end of the sixth seal? At the end of the sixth seal, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the time of his wrath has come. How about, again, go back to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, you've got the first half of seals, the second half of seals with the Antichrist, the beast. Then you've got the Ancient of Days. Hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Antichrist, the beast, is killed. And what? Son of Man is brought in the clouds of heaven to the Ancient of Days, and his dominion is given to him. When does he show up? At the end of seals. So when is he going to be rendered apparent? At the end of the 6th year of seals, which is in the Gospels directly related to what time? Remember what I told you about the resurrection story, the triumphal entry story, the transfiguration story? The ones in Luke are like the pre-tribs. The ones in Mark are his coming at the end of the 6 years of seals. And the one in Matthew is his coming at the end, feet down on the Mount of Olives, at the end of the 6th year of trumpets. I've been showing you those ones in Matthew. But for him to become one of the two witnesses, he first has to what? Come and be made apparent. When does he do that? You got it. Mark chapter 16. After that, he appeared in another form unto two of them. And then what? Verse 14. And afterward he appeared unto the 11 and sat in meat and unbraided them. Remember I told you this was different than Luke. It was different than the one we were going through in Matthew. This is his conversation to the 144,000 who did not believe the testimony of the two worker groups during seals, when he appears unto them in another form. And the 144,000 are the ones who are going to help bring in the great multitude rapture by preaching the gospel to every creature in that final portion in the 7th year, that first half. And there's this believe and baptize, and there's those that will be damned, and the signs will follow them, casting out devils. They'll be so excited, and then taking up serpents. Then this is their commission going into trumpets. And what does it say now? Now you're going to see me sitting on the right hand of my Father, and I'm going to be working with them. See, he's going to be working with the 144,000, confirming them with signs and with words and signs following along the way. Because as one of the two witnesses, as that true witness, who is he? He's the high priest. He's the Melchizedek. He is the high priest in direct communication with the Father, the one on the throne, who are they asked to hide their face from. The reason the rendered apparent is there, and the reason that it's related to Mark, is because he must come first to be made apparent at the end of seals, before he could be once in the end of the world as one of the two witnesses. It's crazy stuff. It is crazy, wild, incredible stuff when you understand it. You see, verse 28 then says, and so Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many. of many. And unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. Do you know when you get to chapter 10, it then talks about, how he had another body. See, even starting in verse 8, Hebrews 10 verse 8, I'm going to finish with this. Above, when he said, sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offering of sin, thou wouldest not, neither had pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. You see, there's a burnt offering, there's a sin offering. Then said he, lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second, by the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Christ Jesus once for all. How about that? See that? One said many, one says all. There is built-in prophecy, brothers and sisters. And I don't say these things because I want to be telling the world, oh, Christ is going to be sacrificed again. I wouldn't even want to be going on talking and teaching in all these places, because if people hear this, if people began to hear this before really understanding all the revelations here, I'd probably be burnt. I'd probably be killed along the way. They would think it's the most blasphemous thing ever spoken. But we know there's a group that was blinded. We know there is a sacrifice of an ox, of the bull, that still needs to take place. We know the differences in the Gospels and who they speak to. And when you understand those mysteries, when you understand those differences being spoken within them, it becomes extremely, extremely clear. That's why we've got other channels out there like Interrupts 165 and others, and smaller ones, and others that are doing Bible studies all over the world. Not because we dare to want to speak something like this, but because the truth of the revelation is true. And this was another one of those things where, when it was shared with me with Mike through, I believe it was a brother that shared it with him, and you see this word end, I said I knew exactly how I was going to share this. Exactly. Because I was going to do it in reverse and show it from the Old Testament into the New, so that you guys understood the entire way through that truly every single portion of that word was about the literal end of days. So that by the time you saw Hebrews 9:26, you would understand that it was talking about an again, that he would do it in the end of days for a group that was blinded and a group that was sealed, that goes into trouble. We've talked about that before. Maybe we'll talk about it again in a more detailed video now that we know more about Ephraim and things like this. But brothers and sisters, it's true. I didn't want to share it for over 2 years in the understanding, and then I finally did that video again. This is another one directly dovetailing into that, connected to the two witnesses, connected to the entire storyline that is about his again, proving to us, showing us yet again that it is absolutely true. So I pray it blesses you. I know it'll be hard to take for new people. That is why I always say go to that playlist first. All right? Don't worry so much about this teaching. Go spend your time in the Gospels and in the revelation of the Gospels. It will blow your mind to go and be a Berean after, and go and seek them yourself. and to understand the period of time that it sets us in, which is right now. Right now. I'm speaking to you right here. And we are looking to right here. We're what? Less than a month to seeing things happen and the world changing forever. Are you ready? Are you watching and praying? Are you diligently in the Lord? Are you repentant? Do you love the Lord? Are you baptized in Jesus' name for the remission of sins? Now is the time. Let's all keep from sin. Join us in the forum. Lift each other up. Share with each other. Encourage and strengthen each other. And we'll see you guys all very, very soon. I love you. God bless you. Bye for now.